Hello, I'm Chris, the English minister for Vinewood CFC Berkeley.
Hi, I'm Dennis, English pastor at Vinewood CFC.
And we want to welcome you to episode 6 of our podcast, Heard It Through the Grapevine, where we hope to encourage you in your faith and knowledge of God by giving you biblical and theological clarity to your questions about faith and life. And so this week, we are so honored and privileged to have, I guess you want to call it an alumni or previous member of CFC Berkeley, Pastor Eddie. He currently
makes me sound really old and rickety.
That's right. Well, he currently is the pastor at Contra Costa Gospel Church in Walnut Creek, and so thank you for joining us, Pastor Eddie. You want to just talk a little bit about yourself and perhaps your connection with CFC Berkeley?
Sure. First of all, Dennis and Chris, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the chance to share whatever it is that hopefully can be helpful to the people who are listening to your congregation. Just very quickly, who I am. I'm currently the English pastor at Contra Costa Gospel Church in Walnut Creek. I've been here for 18 years. And I was born and raised in LA, came up to Berkeley for college. I went to Cal, and I went to CFC. And I went to the English ministry at CFC for a total of 8 years. I was there 4 years as a student, part of Crossroads Christian Fellowship, which is the college ministry at CFC. It still is called Crossroads. And then I stayed 4 more years after that, helping to minister to the youth, the high school and junior high group, Agape, at CFC Berkeley. I was there for 4 more years until I left to come to this church in Walnut Creek. So a lot of my really growing up years, we reflect on our time at CFC. We came in as kind of like big kids, really. Kids who were becoming young adults, maybe young adults just about at that point. And then we left as firmly entrenched adults. So we kind of grew up at CFC. So there's a very, very soft spot in my heart for the church that God's called you guys to lead, and I'm excited to see you guys do such a good job with it. So yeah, thanks for having me. That's kind of the background.
Thanks, Pastor Eddie. Just for all of you listeners tuning in, my connection with Pastor Eddie, this is going to make him sound even older. Actually, some of his Agape students were my college roommates. Shout out to Daniel Cow, and there was also within my college fellowship, Marianne. We were all... Also, Daniel Carlson. These are all people that were a part of CFC Berkeley, and they were Agape students under Eddie, and I was their part of their college fellowship and their peers. So Pastor Eddie and I have some history there, and so it's just really exciting to have you come and join us. Really quickly, Eddie, can you just share with us a little bit about what have you been doing in regards to CCGC, sheltering in place, COVID-19? How have you been able to deal with the situation and shepherd and minister your church through this time?
And I don't want to speak for every pastor, every church, but I would say that the last 3 months have been some of the most challenging times in terms of figuring out how to meet the needs of our church while not being able to get together. The first few weeks of live streaming were, I don't know, maybe we pulled it off to a certain degree, but they were really hard. And again, I don't want to go too far down this road, but just speaking into a camera was very odd. Without having any kind of interaction or response that I could play off of from the people listening. We were counting, and this past Sunday was our 11th or 12th time, and it was one of the few weeks where nothing went wrong. The tech didn't fail us. For the most part, everything was very smooth, and we left there feeling like, wow, yeah, right, we did it. We did it smoothly.
Praise God.
Without hiccups. Yeah. So as far as Sunday morning worship is concerned, it's been live streamed. And I suppose to a certain degree, you can say we've kind of figured it out a little bit. All of the fellowship groups, including in our church, we're a bilingual congregation. So on the Chinese side, there are a lot of fellowships that are older folks, seniors. And even those groups, we all meet now on either Zoom or Google Meet or some sort of online platform.
That's great.
And, I mean, as much as we don't want to get used to this, because we've been trying to stress this isn't permanent.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we've gotten used to it. It's good. It's good to get into the rhythm. So all of our Bible studies and fellowship groups and prayer meetings, small groups, they all meet online now.
Yeah.
I try to pop in to the ones that, that I'm involved with or that I have some sort of connection to, just to see how they're doing. And then you have a lot of groups of people, small pockets, maybe not an official fellowship. They're just choosing to meet online on their own. My wife's part of a group. Couple of moms meet Saturday morning for prayer, and they meet for a while, and it's not formal, but it's just for them to connect in ways that they don't normally get to. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
And then at home, just real quickly, just to round it out here, at home, both my wife and I are working from home, and I have two sons, one who just finished fourth grade and one who just finished preschool. So up until last week, the fourth grader had schoolwork, so he'd be busy doing his work. The preschooler, we'd be giving him stuff to do, interspersed with like playtime and video games and whatnot.
Oh my goodness!
But now this is the first week where they're doing nothing, okay, and they're just bouncing around the house. So I got the door locked right now, so they can't come in here. Yeah. So.
Dennis is in the living room, so he's trying to work that out, right?
Yeah, Dennis understands, because his kids are bouncing around as well. Chris, your kid not quite bouncing around yet.
No, she's napping right now, but sometimes when she's fussy, you can hear it in the microphone. So I have to do it I have to post edit all.
Take it out.
Yeah. But anyways, well, again, thank you, Eddie, for joining us this week for episode 6. We have a very kind of interesting question, an important question, and very, I don't want to say specific to COVID-19 because it can happen at any point in time, but it's highlighted this question even more, especially during shelter in place. And so the question is this: how can we be godly and loving spouses, parents, children, and siblings, especially during shelter in place? Now, the context of this question really came about from a college student who really was forced to go back home because, of COVID-19 and is living with his parents, and the family dynamics is not very healthy. Everyone in the family is Christian, but there are just a lot of arguments between parents, arguments between siblings, and just kind of the stress of COVID-19, sheltering in place, and fear has highlighted this. And the individual who asked this question is really asking: is there anything I can do? Is there anything that as a family we can? How can we improve and live life better, especially during this where we're stuck at home? And so. This, like I said, this question is kind of highlighted because of COVID-19, whereas perhaps most people who ask this question within the college context, it's, well, when you leave college after 4 years, you come back home, you kind of have to live with your parents for a little bit, and you struggle with this idea. But now every single college student has to, or young adult has to go back and live with their parents because they, don't want to be by themselves or something along those lines, and they're feeling the tension. And so, Eddie, I don't know if you have any. I hope you have answers to this question. But yeah, do you? What thoughts?
Yeah, answers is a loaded word. I'm not sure if I have answers. I have thoughts.
Sounds
whether
good.
they answer anything or not. I mean, we can just kind of talk around this issue because there's so many different aspects to speak about with regards to the family dynamics.
Yeah.
This is an unprecedented time. Okay, let's just speak specifically about this pandemic that we're in. We have come to recognize at home here, we have never, ever spent this much time under the same roof ever. And I'm we have room to spread out. We could each be in our own room and not interact with each other. And yet we find that, frustrations run high and people are irritable, and particularly in the beginning, I found that, my own personal patience is running thin. And if you go back to the sermons that I preached in the beginning of this pandemic, I would share, I'm so irritable all the time.
Yeah.
And I would say, and by the way, you hear also kind of sort of anecdotally, the divorce rate is up. I mean, people they just have had it. I think the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear this question and when I consider our own situation is, there's a sense of humility first. We're not as put together as we'd like to think that we are. I'd like to think that me and my wife, we get along really well, and we're reasonable people, and we love the Lord, and because he calls us to love each other deeply and committedly, not just because we do, but he calls us to. So yeah, we got that going, and we're told to be patient and forbearing, and we understand that. And I'm telling you, you know what? It's really hard. It's really hard to do that every single time that we've been together like this, and never this long, but every time when the four of us, my family, has had to be under the same roof, it's been on vacation. That's like kind of the approximation, right? You go on a week-long cruise or something, and you're in the same cabin.
Sure.
But that's different because you go swimming, and you have activities, and you have stuff to do. And there are times there's nothing to do, nothing that, really gives us a reprieve. So it's just kind of a grind.
Yeah.
And I would say that the first thing that really came to my mind is a sense of, I thought I was better than this, but I realize how broken of a person I am. And obviously your listeners may or may not know me personally. And I would just say, you can take that as you will. I'd like to think that we're a healthy family, but wow, we stepped on each other's toes and still do a lot. Wow. So I would say so we've been in about 3 months. I would say in the first month and a half, we had quite a few heart-to-heart talks, okay, including the kids. And on a few different occasions, I've had to say to the kids, Baba, sorry, I went too far. I got irritated too quickly, okay? We've come to recognize that if we're not able to admit that to our own children, then we're lying to them, somehow presenting to them that they're always in the wrong. That's not true. They're mostly in the wrong because we're the parents, but not always. Yeah. And there are times that I didn't communicate clearly. There are times I snapped. My wife has snapped at them. We've been short with them, and it's not fair to them. So there is that recognition. And I would say to the person asking this question, we need to recognize that all of us are broken people, Christian or not. And that brokenness is exacerbated. It's brought to the forefront in the midst of this constant low-level tension. To me, that's where it starts. Okay, we'll start with that. And I would say that to the person asking the question, it's to recognize that he, himself, she, herself, whoever it is, and their parents were all broken people. And when we recognize that, I would say that maybe to a certain degree, it allows us a little bit more leeway with each other. It gives us the ability, it arms us to be a little bit more patient with each other, because sometimes we're just tired. Sometimes we did just come from a difficult conversation with a coworker or a colleague or, a church member or whatever it is. And we project it onto our family members. That probably is one of the biggest things that I've come to recognize is my own brokenness, is my own sinfulness. Okay. And then what that leads to is then very much mutual understanding. Like I said, particularly in the beginning, I honestly thank God that in the last few weeks, it's been a little bit quieter on the disagreement front between my wife and I, because you know what, we had to work through a lot of stuff, and we had to express a lot of stuff. it's okay to express frustration. In fact, I would even say it's probably important to do so. You just got to watch your tongue. You got to watch what you say. You got to listen. That's something we don't really do. We have to listen to each other and try to understand each other. And in the first several weeks, when we found ourselves having these really deep conversations where we have to excuse the kids. Hey, you guys need to leave us alone for, the next few moments, quite a bit.
Yeah.
So hearing this question from your student, from whoever it is that's asking the question, to me, it's not a surprise. They're just recognizing what we all recognize.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I like what you said. The words that came to mind are empathy and conversation. And I think, especially from a child to a parent standpoint, I am a parent, but my daughter's just turned 1 a couple of days ago. So it's a little different. I can't have a deep conversation with her about, parent dynamic between Tamai and myself. But as a child, I remember going back home after college and just kind of really struggling with my own parents. And the words were really empathy and deep conversations. And I think that's what you mentioned, Eddie, is once you realize that we are all sinners, we all struggle, especially, and it's highlighted even more during COVID-19, it's having this empathy for the other side or what you're witnessing, and generally understanding, man, they're going through a lot of things. They're struggling with a lot of things. And then having these deep conversations, especially for older children, you should, it's not that you should get mad at them for arguing or being upset at each other and trying to pick a side, but maybe it is pick an individual parent and just sit down with them. Hey, is everything, just kind of rising to the occasion. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more, kind of parent-child dynamic, especially with this tension. But I like the last thing you said, Pastor Eddie, of as a child, to a parent, you're probably just witnessing something that's always been there, and COVID-19 just kind of highlighted it. And every parent, every person struggles with sin, pride, whatever you want to call it. And these arguments are always happening. And part of this is in this question, it also says, my parents are fighting and they're seemingly broken relationship. And the reality is, man, when you're married, you're going to see a lot of fights. There are going to be a lot of arguments. And it's not necessarily the relationship broken in the worldly sense of like divorce or whatnot. But let's be honest, you're bringing two sinful people together and they're trying to deal with this. And then you have children and they're also sinful. There's just a lot of arguing that could happen there. And so, but yeah, thanks for sharing. Dennis, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the blessing of this time of sheltering in place is that this is a stress test, and it reveals a lot about ourselves. I think it accelerates everything. I think right now, especially in the market in the world, a lot of people are saying that this is an acceleration of companies who are strong will thrive and survive, and companies who have a lot of underlying issues are going to die. And in a very similar vein, us having to be at home is just revealing what's already there. And now, of course, we don't want to see any relationships die. We want them to thrive. We want them to grow. We want this to be a time where they can see that. But the blessing in one sense is that it gives us a lot of, it makes it very clear. It shows us our sin. We are not as patient as we think we are. We are not as kind or as loving as we think we are. And it's just revealing the reality that maybe we have found so easy to hide with distance and with time apart. And we can't hide anymore. And I think that's the thing. And it might sound like a bad thing. You can't hide, but I think as believers, we should always be grateful when the Lord reveals sin in our life that we can repent and we can turn from. And the blessing here is because we're stuck together, we have a lot of opportunities to make things right. And if we look at it from one way, we have a lot of opportunities to screw up, which I completely resonate with what Pastor Eddie says. I have, been very irritable towards my kids, and and my wife and I have definitely been irritable towards the kids together. It's really bad when both of us are like there's no good cop, bad cop. It's just like bad cop, worst cop, and it's like, oh man, this is bad. This is a bad place to be. But it also gave us more opportunities to ask for forgiveness and have those conversations, and then being very, very keen and aware of like, okay, I really need to watch my tongue here, or I need to watch my patience, and then literally get tested 5 minutes later, right? And you're like, okay, I have an opportunity to grow in this aspect. And so I think I don't think that's a bad thing. It's hard and it hurts and it's not fun, but it's not bad because I think we have a lot of opportunities for spiritual growth in this regard, and a lot of opportunities to just be honest with who we are. I do think that is different because right now, I'm speaking as a husband and as a father, not as a son. And I think it's definitely much different for, when you feel probably more helpless, because when you're watching your parents fight, it definitely can feel more helpless, and especially maybe even in an Asian dynamic where, and I don't know who, I don't know where this person comes from, but for like, say for me, for example, second generation Asian American and then immigrant parents, there's not like a place for me to really speak into that, right? Like, I think like when I hope when I get older, say, my daughter or my son, when they're adults, that we can have like adult conversations. I think that's definitely more, Western value type of thing. But I can see the difficulties where it's like, I can't say anything because I'm still quote unquote the child, which I can definitely understand that the way that this needs to be approached will definitely look a lot different.
Yeah.
Let me piggyback off of Dennis just for a moment. As far as being second generation Asian American, born to immigrant parents, I'm going to assume, I could be wrong, but I'm going to assume that's probably the dynamic that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I would say this, that both of my parents, by the way, have already passed away. The second parent to died 20 years ago. So I've not had parents for a long time now. But I've also found that as I've aged and the distance between them dying and today, as it grows, my respect and admiration, my love for them has grown. I think when I was younger, I was very impatient with them. I had a very high expectations. How could you do X, Y, and Z? That's wrong. That's against the Bible. And I was very much a right or wrong, black or white type of person, particularly toward my parents and my father. And I think sometimes my father would take offense at that, because he would come back at me. You don't understand the world. You don't understand how things are. You're naive. And it's not to say that as I've aged, as now I understand the world. Now I know why he did it. It's not that. But it's to recognize that some of these things aren't as easy as I made them out to be. It's not so easy as just to say, let's say, for example, you're seeing your parents argue. It's not so easy as just to say, well, you need to forgive each other and love each other and understand each other, and then it'll go away. Yeah. No, you know what? I wish it were that easy. I wish, man, if we could figure that out, write a book, 3-step process of how to resolve all. Man, we'd clean up. It's not that easy. And I sorry, real quick. Let's not my last comment here. Just one thought that I've always had is that, and I love this line, that the older I get, the wiser my parents get. And they're not alive anymore. The older I get, the wiser they get, because the older I get, the more I realize what they used to tell me. Maybe they didn't figure out a good way to communicate to me as a young person, but what they said was pretty much spot on a lot of the times. Sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dennis.
Oh yeah, no. I definitely resonate with that as well. My father passed about 8 years ago. Thankfully, my mom is still around, and obviously, I am not as old as Pastor Eddie. I just want to be very, very clear.
Here we go.
But
hey, I definitely post-edit this. Can you smooth out the wrinkles? Okay, do me a favor. Okay, help me out here.
But I definitely resonate in that regard. I think the older, and I'm pretty sure Chris would feel the same, the older we get, the more we realize our parents are human beings and they, they make mistakes. They're sinners just like me. And there is this irony because when we were younger, my parents, I would say, I don't want to speak on behalf of every parent, but I definitely feel like my parents had this like high standard, or I think I broke it. I think I didn't meet it so many times they eventually just gave up. But definitely, like there was this like high standard of me, what a child should be, right? To be obedient or to be good at school or whatever it may be. But definitely on the flip side, as kids, we have this high standard on our parents, which in some sense makes sense. When you're a kid, you look up to your mom, you look up to your dad. They're like, you don't expect anything less than perfect from them, because why would you? I mean, and I think there's that lack of empathy and lack of grace that Christ calls us to as Christians. That uh, you know, how do we see someone that we might value, respect, and honor, but also be able to hold that intention to they are sinful human beings that make not just make mistakes, but they can be selfish, because we all can be selfish. They can be irritable, just like all of us. They can be this or that, just like any of us. And they need Christ just as much as we do. I think that helps change the perception of how we approach them. Instead of thinking you should be better, is recognizing, man, we all need to grow. I think that's something I even learned as a pastor when I was younger. When I first came into ministry, I see these older Christians who are maybe 20 years, 30 years older than me. And I'll think to myself during those times, how on earth can you be, 20, 30 years older than me, but be quote unquote immature as a Christian? And then I just started learning, like, wait a minute, there's just the reality that there's going to be Christians younger than me, they're going to be more mature than me, Christians older than me, there's going to be less mature than me, because we are all learning and growing. And how do I give them grace and understanding, instead of kind of holding to the standard just because they're older than me. And I think that helped me in how to be more tender and caring and just gracious in my words.
Yeah. I think my parents are still alive, and my wife's parents are still alive, thank God. But I'm the youngest of the group right here. and I think some practical tips for college students, whoever's living with their parents. One of the things I realized with this idea of empathy and understanding what perhaps your parents are going through, when we say unprecedented, it's I think there's different levels. I think for our generation, or my generation, Dennis, and even Pastor Eddie, we can kind of adapt technologically, right? We understand this Zoom thing, Google Meet thing, and somehow relating. We all have Facebook accounts and all these kinds of things. But our parents, they didn't grow up with this. At the end of their kind of lifespan, they're like, oh, you have the shelter in place, and the only way you can work is from home, and you have to, somehow connect via Zoom, and all these things are so confusing. I keep joking. I spend more time teaching my mom how to use Zoom every time we have Zoom meetings than we actually have a conversation with one another over Zoom, because they just don't understand. They don't get it. And I even have conversations with my mom. She's like, I have no idea how I could work from home. How is that even possible? Is that even ethical? Is something that she's kind of wrapping her head around, because they're just not used to it. Back probably for your parents, if they're businessmen or whatnot, they would travel, and they would have to travel because they need to meet individuals in person to do business interactions, right? Whereas nowadays you can just do business interactions over Zoom. It's so easy. You can stay from home, and parents are struggling so hard with kind of this idea of working from home. And so the practical tip is wait for opportunities to help. When your parents are frustrated, from a very soft, kind heart, offer opportunities to help, especially when it comes to technology. Let's be honest. And it kind of breaks some ground, showing that you care about what they're going through. And you never know what stems from that. Because I know by doing that for my parents, it's helped a lot. It's kind of grown the connection between them and me to kind of increase the communication level during shelter in place. But I don't know if you guys have any other, maybe more other practical tips, especially from the mindset of a child to a parent.
I know that this is not the focus of this podcast is not necessarily technology and parent-child relationships per se, but just to add on to, just you triggered a thought in me. Every generation prior to the current one, okay, the last 50 years, every generation, the parent always knew more than the child. Always. Always, always, always. Okay. And you think back, you rewind the clock 100 years, 200 years, where a trade was passed from father to son, father to daughter, mother to daughter. I always knew more than my kid. I always had a little bit more experience, or a lot more experience in carpentry or whatever it is that we did. Okay. Farming. This current situation, you're dependent on people who you're supposed to know more than, and we it's funny. My kids are little, so I still know more than them. Okay. Except, just really quickly, a funny story. We all play in pandemic. We have all adopted a video game that we all play together. Okay. And it's not on a Nintendo Switch. It's on a phone or an iPad. It's called Brawl Stars. Okay. It's a battle game. It's a very cute battle game. And we all play. We all have our own accounts. And my older son even has a Brawl Stars encyclopedia that he will study. He will read it. Okay. And he will know. He knows, I mean, not because he's studying it, but he just read it and interested. He knows how much damage this person's attack does. And when she gets her special, it's called a gadget, what the gadget does, what the gadget's called, how much damage it does. And so I'll ask him, like, almost to test him, but also because I'm curious. Hey, what is Shelly's gadget? And what does it do? And he'll know, oh, it's called blah, blah, blah. He'll tell me. And it does this comes day, and this is what it does. And what's Jackie's gadget? And he'll start to reel it off. And so there is kind of this, I have no problem expressing to him in this way, you know more than me. Okay. But still, for the most part, he's only 10. I know more about computers and the internet and the home Wi-Fi and, all this kind of stuff than he does. That's going to change. I mean, I'm not in the process of still learning these things. And there's going to come a day he's going to have to teach me. Now, the reason I mention that is because for this person asking the question, as you've mentioned very well, to be ready for opportunities to help your parents, the tone in which it's spoken is so important. How to do it in a way where you know more, and you're almost like, Mom, Dad, are you kidding me? You don't know this? But without doing it in a way to show them up. They are already internally coming to grips with the fact that they don't know how to navigate the world today in this area, right? Because it's new and it's fast and everything is changing. And I feel like, and now that I'm kind of in middle age or even beyond middle age, people who are a younger generation, they talk in a certain vernacular. And if I don't know that word, they're almost laughing at me. How could you, Eddie, you don't know what that word means? And I'm thinking to myself, how am I supposed to know what that word means? You guys keep changing the words all the time. I don't know what that means. In gaming, there's a word you call them a sweat or if you just stuck with newbie or rookie, I know what those words, but no, you're a sweat. You're a tryhard. What's a tryhard? What's a sweat? You have to define these words for me. But by the time I learn them, you're going to change them again. Okay? Yeah. How you talk to your parents with deference and love and respect to honor them while also informing them, to me, is everything with regards to creating proper relationship channels. Yeah, of course you know more. Of course you know more because you read and you are woke. I know that word, okay? But, at the same time, if you belittle them, then you're adding fuel to this already burning fire.
Yeah. That's great.
So, I mean, it sounds like, one of them is looking for ways to help and just offering opportunities, and you got to do it in a way that's humble, right? With the humility, the tone, and things like that. I think sometimes there's just like even areas and arenas that we can't enter into because, say, it sounds like sometimes he or she is seeing this person, parents fight. So they're not necessarily fighting with this student, but with he's watching or she's watching this thing happening. And I think one of the ways that we can as kids kind of work in that situation, pray for your parents, especially if there are believers. We must not underestimate the place prayer has in the life of a Christian. It is not a useless thing. It is not just something. It's not just something we do, but we believe that it is truly important that God does work. And I think the second thing is a lot of times you don't want to talk you don't want to talk down to your parents, and that could even sound like when you're trying to teach them something. But approaching it from the aspect of sharing what you have learned, because they still see you as a kid and they still see and understand your faults, which is you do have faults, you do have sins, and being able to share, like this week in my time of reading the word, I was really impressed by this, or it really convicted me in this. And so a way that it's easy for or a way that is maybe easier for our parents to understand is, instead of telling them areas that they are doing wrong, we have to see the areas that we need improvement and share how that is working. It's literally taking the plank out of your own eye. And also, you don't discount that your actions speak louder than words as well.
Yeah.
That even though they might not say anything, I've learned parents will always recognize the growth of their kids. They have been studying you your whole entire life. They know you, and they know how you tick. They know what buttons get pushed. And when they start seeing those buttons getting pushed and you responding differently, they will know. They might not tell you, but they will know. I'll give you an example. This one time I was out. We were on this family vacation, and my mom was really upset about something. And so and normally when she gets upset, she'll tell me, and she's, very, she'll say all these things, and then I would respond in likewise, and we're like, it just normally blows up and escalates. But this time around, I was just like, I've been growing in this area a lot. I'm learning how to be humble. I'm learning how to be patient, and I don't respond. And it was really, really hard. And I didn't respond. And later on, and my mom didn't say anything to me, but later on, my mom told my sister, it's like, hey, your brother kind of changed. Like, I think after, when my mom took a few steps back, she realized, okay, maybe I was a little too much. But, as a parent, she's not going to say that to me. But she recognized it. And I think a lot of times we might feel like as kids, like, oh, we never get recognized for things. But I'm telling you, like, the parents know you. And whether they say it or not, they will recognize when you've changed. And and those are probably the ways that we have to learn how to lead from behind. And that's important, because it's not your job to get ahead and be their pastor and tell them how to fix their marriage or anything like that, but to really learn how to lead from behind, pattern what humility looks like, pattern what patience looks like, and share what God has been working in you, and not pretend. Like, you have to let the word of God work in your own life and then share those things. And I'm telling you that helps. That will help your parents see that the gospel is powerful in your life, and then that in return will give hope for their current situation.
That's great. Well, thank you. This is all the time that we have this week. I personally want to thank you, Pastor Eddie, for joining us and the wisdom that you've offered to us. And I want to thank all of you, our listeners, for tuning in and supporting us every single week, listening to our podcast. We hope you'll continue listening to us and supporting us by listening and submitting your questions online. There'll be a link in our description for you to submit any questions that you have pertaining to faith and life. And so we hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.